Kate, this brings us to the end. We've got one more.
All righty.
Our last one. Last but not least. Hey, Rachel.
How are y'all?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's really good to see y'all.
It's great to see you.
Yeah.
So, Rachel Jones, before you share your story, tell us where you are today.
So today I am at my house on the farm in Kentucky. I actually am not too far from where Allison is. I live in a little tiny town called Corinth that is between Cincinnati and Lexington. And in my real life, I'm an editor for Forward Movement.
Nice.
But today, what I'm reading to you guys is just something by a housewife or middle-aged lady or your sister or some girl down the block that you went to camp with. So
Wonderful.
The last time I watched spring this closely was the spring I fell in love. But newly smitten spring in Texas came on differently than married spring in quarantine Kentucky. Different sight lines, different trees and flowers, different birds, except for the wild turkeys. And those friendly ghosts in the brush between the pastures have followed us from the Llano River all the way to the Ohio River. And they have brought along with them 8 years of wisdom and collected life to help us along. The deep joy of that spring of falling in love has followed me into this one. And this spring has brought a strange grief to all of us. It's hard to know how to hold all these feelings, and at least once a day, I can't hold them in a snot cry for 10 or 15 minutes, and then try to get back to whatever I was doing or attempting to do. Work, making a salad, washing dishes, letting the dog outside, stuff that would usually be not a big deal, but right now feels like mission impossible crossed with the worst test anxiety that ever was. A lot of my recent days have been like that. Big feelings, super exhausting, barely moving the needle or taking an item off my to-do list. I say this not for sympathy, but because I deeply suspect I'm not alone on this struggle bus to wherever it is that we're going. Come sit next to me for a minute, and I'll tell you what I can see from here. The signs of order and life are all around the farm, organizing the chaos into blackberry brambles and lithe black locust blossoms and honeysuckle buntings around the deadfall from the fall and winter. I sit on the porch more than I ever have in my life, watching the springtime orchestra tune up. I sit as still as I can, surrounded by our funny little outside cats, listening for God's voice cueing things up between rainstorms and late season cold snaps. Lately, when I can't bear to look at the news anymore, I sit in my chair and look at the hayfields. The daylilies and wild peonies are bushing out close to the ground, and they will be blushing and blooming before long, spending their sweetness quickly. The yellow meadow larks and impossibly tiny little bluebirds are all mated up and spend the gloaming hours in morning and evening grabbing snacks and bits and bobs for their babies. The larch in the yard is budding pink and green, and before I know it, it'll be bubbled out, wild and woolly and green. And the black walnuts will leaf out and turn almost blue at the height of their greenness this summer. Jesus asks us to consider the birds of the air and the lilies in the fields. He asks us not to trouble our hearts with worry over what we will make or spend or wear. And when I am willing to literally do that, to look at the world around me and see what God has made and is making, things change in my heart. Jesus is always pointing us to growth and abundance and the beauty God has revealed in the dirt of creation, in the dust of our bones, in the stuff of stars, the holy chaos of love, the making and remaking of all the things, springtime, our precious hearts, and the whole world. Hang in there. Love is coming, and love is here.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Want to come be on that farm right now. Sounds beautiful.
Everyone's talking about the gift of social or the electronic distancing, but right now I just really wish I could give you a hug of gratitude. I told you earlier I was gonna print that out somewhere like a bookmark and hold those words in front of me as often as I could.
Well, thank you for having me.
It.
Thanks. Thank you for inviting me to think about it, because I didn't know some of that was in there.
Now, really quickly, your voice sounds very familiar to me.
If you listen to the Forward Day by Day podcast, you probably hear my voice a lot.
I do. I listen to it daily. I love it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you again for being with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
I heard a number of things about keeping track of time, and while this holy chaos of time has called us not to keep track of time, I have two little ones who make me keep track of time with a every 3-hour feeding schedule. So I am gonna have to bid adieu. I think the words Rachel shared, the holy chaos of love, and love is coming, will remain with me this week and until we meet again, which I hope will be soon.
Yeah, absolutely. We had talked about starting this time with a prayer. We hadn't talked about ending one with a prayer, but it feels like Rachel's words are that prayer. And if you were watching this after it goes live, or even watching now, and you have the thoughts, keep the comments going. If you want to use that as a place to share your story, if you know someone who needs to hear some of these stories, pass it along and share it too. Your comments and your sharing the stories, just like today, you are the content that we're interested in terms of being present to each other's lives, whatever shape that takes. But that will help us kind of figure out and determine what, as Kate was saying, well, we might do this again before too long, kind of what kind of shape that will take. So yeah, I'm just really, really grateful for everyone who shared from their hearts today. Really grateful for everyone who either watched from beginning to end or just caught a piece of this or shared any amount of this time with us. We're really, really grateful.
Yeah. Thanks again to all who shared. And I know some wrote their stories down, so maybe we'll be able to share those on our Facebook page as well.
Absolutely. All right. And thank you, Kate. It's always good to see you.
You too. Peace, blessings.
Peace.
Safe and sane.